Hello and welcome to another Magic 2015 gameplay. Today we're taking a look at Abzan Lifegain once again, since we did add a new card since the last time we've played this deck, and that card is Felidar Sovereign, a 6 mana 4/6 with Vigilance and Lifelink, and he's an alternate win condition because at the beginning of your upkeep, if you have 40 or more life, you win the game. So a pretty sweet alternate win condition that's pretty easy to get in this deck. 40 life is pretty easy to get, especially if you have a Rhox Faithmender in play for a while. So the deck is still pretty much the same as last time. We're black, white and green. Green gives us the ramp with Cultivate and the mana fixing. Then we're playing 12 gates in this deck to support our Saruli Gatekeepers. So unfortunately no trial lands, because otherwise we have too many tapped lands, but Saruli Gatekeepers, another very powerful card in this archetype, gains 7 life if you have 2 gates in play, which is a lot of life, and a 2/4 body is still not bad, as it can block and maybe even attack. Then we also have Sylvan Bounty as a land cycler early on. In the late game, if you draw it, you can still use it to gain 8 life, which can be very good. And then of course Pelakka Wurm gains 7 life when he enters a battlefield, so goes well with the entire deck and is also just a giant threat. Then the white is probably our main color. We've got Lone Missionary as an early play against aggro decks and a cheap way to gain 4 life later on the game. We've got Rhox Faithmender to double all our life gain. We've got Angelic Accord, which is an awesome card in the Lifegain archetype. If you gained 4 or more life during the turn, you get a 4/4 Angel token, and most of our Lifegain here is 4 or more life, so it's pretty easy to trigger and provides a steady stream of Angel tokens. Then we've got Baneslayer Angel, and this actually does synergize in this deck for once, as it does have lifelink and also kills very quickly. And we also have a Battlegrace Angel, which is pretty much Baneslayer Angel number 2 and 3, which is still very powerful, especially if you can take advantage of the Exalted and the ability right away if you have a 4-drop in play, which this deck does have a lot of. You can play this on turn 5 and attack with your 4-drop and get the benefit right away, which is nice. And then we've got Felidar, of course, and then black gives us a bit of removal and Tribute to Hunger, some card advantage with a Graveborn Muse, since the life loss doesn't really matter in this deck. Of course, Tribute also synergizing with the life gain spells. And then Sanguine Bond as a nice enchantment to drain the opponent whenever we gain life, and if we gain life in chunks of 7 with Pelakka Wurm, the opponent's gonna die pretty quickly. We've got a Rune-Scarred Demon to basically have another giant creature for our Guildmage here, which I'll get to in a second, and also just to fetch combo pieces like Sanguine Bond. If we already have a Sanguine Bond, it can look for a Pelakka Wurm or another demon if you just need more creatures, or can look for a removal spell, or maybe even the Felidar if we're above 40 life. So just another big finisher, since we are ramping with Cultivate. And then finally Vizkopa Guildmage, which has the ability to give lifelink, goes very well with our giant Pelakka Wurm and Rune-Scarred Demon, and can also be used to have the Sanguine Bond effect of losing the opponent life whenever we gain life, which goes also very well with cheap cards like a Lone Missionary. You can, for 5 mana, play the Missionary and activate the Guildmage to drain the opponent for 4. So that's the deck. Again, the lands, running all 12 gates in our colors, not playing the tri-land because otherwise we have too many tapped lands in this deck. 12 is more than enough, but this still gives us 12 gates for the Saruli Gatekeepers, which should be enough to activate it frequently. And then mainly green lands here, because we do want to be able to play Cultivate on 3, and 13 green sources should be able to handle that. And we also can use a green to cycle the Sylvan Bounty to get the remaining black and white sources we need. Also need triple green for Pelakka Wurm, so skewed towards the green here. And then 2 swamps we can get for double black spells with Cultivate, and then the remaining lands are plains. Alright, let's jump into some games and finish some people off with Felidar Sovereign, hopefully. Alright, let's take a look here at our opening hand. We are on the play, only 1 land. Do have a Sylvan Bounty, but I think this is too risky if we miss a land drop. And this hand is not ideal, a little bit on the expensive side here. We do have 2 gates, but no Cultivate, no Sylvan Bounty. I think we can do better. And alright, I guess we have a game plan, which is draw 2 lands, play Faithmenders, and hopefully play Baneslayer. Still not a great hand though. This deck rather, does have some sketchy opening hands because we are playing a lot of expensive cards and we only have the 3 Cultivates in the deck. Alright, Guildgate helps. Still pretty far away from casting the Graveborn Muse. Again, we do need to hit our mana fixing in order to cast the Muse reliably. Playing against a blue-black deck. Alright, another Guildgate, I'll take it. Still pretty far away from casting this Muse, but at least we'll get to cast our Faithmenders. And a double means quadruple. So if we ever play a Lone Missionary with 2 Faithmenders in play, that's 16 life, which is not bad. Alright, opponent's Grixis Scholars, so blue, red and black. Passes a turn, could have a counter spell up, but I don't think we can really play around that. If he has it, he has it. And we would rather have him counter this than a Baneslayer Angel. In fact, the next turn I think I'll just play the other Faithmender, if our opponent still keeps mana up, instead of playing the Baneslayer. Opponent also has black mana, so could have Tribute to Hunger, in which case we also want to play a worse creature before tapping out for Baneslayer. But we'll see. Alright, there's a Phyrexian Rager. So lose 1, draw a card. And so we could run out the Baneslayer here if we want to. Or again we can play the Faithmender. I think I'm just gonna try and go for a Baneslayer here. If our opponent has Tribute to Hunger, that's of course not great. But with only 3 cards in hand here, no way to cast our black spells, I think we just have to hope that Baneslayer gets there. Not too many cards that kill Baneslayer here, besides the Tribute to Hunger. Alright, there's a Cultivate, but I'm gonna attack first to see what our opponent does here. And looks like we connect, so I don't think our opponent has an answer. So let's go ahead and cast Cultivate and get 2 swamps. So we can play the Muse, unless our opponent counters this, of course. Alright, I'm not too sad about this. Of course our opponent has no way of knowing we're playing black cards, since he only has seen green and white. So I don't think I agree with countering the Cultivate there, but... Alright, Charmbreaker Devils. Still doesn't really solve the Baneslayer problem. Opponent gets in for 2. And we'll play the Faithmender pre-combat here to gain 10 life instead of just 5. Go ahead and attack, and now we're out of reach of the Charmbreaker Devil's shenanigans. Even if he somehow pumps it up a few times, we're not really gonna die. Opponent's at 9, so Tribute to Hunger no longer kills the Baneslayer. Still a few spells that can kill the Baneslayer Angel. There's Assassinate, there's Banefires if he has the red axe burn spells. So certainly not out of it yet. There's a Chasm Skulker, which is not really a problem. Grows whenever he draws a card, but it's not a flyer and does not stop Baneslayer. Opponent goes to combat. And let's see if he attacks with Charmbreaker Devils. He does. I don't think we risk blocking here. Again, because keeping the Faithmender alive means that Tribute to Hunger is no longer an out for our opponent, and we're not at risk of dying. And he also doubles the life gain, which is nice. So yeah, let's go ahead and attack, see if our opponent maybe has a bounce spell here. Who knows? And looks like he does not. So we finally hit a black source, which means we can play the Guildmage next turn. Opponent maybe has a think twice here. So we'll be able to play the Guildmage, but we can't activate it quite yet because we don't have double black. Opponent gets back a counterspell, but that doesn't really matter, so unless our opponent can kill the Baneslayer right now or deal with it. Alright, Elixir will buy our opponent a turn, as it can gain him 5 life. And he's gonna activate it right away. So still keeping up the solve here that we know about. So I don't think we actually play the Guildmage, since our opponent's just gonna get the dissolve back from the Devils here. Yeah, still not blocking here. Alright, opponent passing. We know he has 2 dissolves in hand. So yeah, let's attack. If our opponent uses something here, we can maybe play the Guildmage. Otherwise, we're just happy attacking for 5 and gaining 10. And pause the turn. Maybe our opponent has an instant this time around. He does. So using a shock here makes sense, since he'll get it back with the Devils anyways. So opponent is not giving up, so let's see if he finally finds an answer for Baneslayer. Our hope is that if he does somehow find an answer, he has to tap all his mana, so we can try and sneak in a Guildmage or a Muse. Because if our opponent keeps up counterspell mana, we're not really resolving anything anytime soon. Let's just take it here. And opponent has another elixir, okay. So still gets to live for a turn. Activates it. And keeps up dissolve mana. Alright, there's a Sylvan Bounty, which can gain us 16 life. So our opponent could go and shock us end of turn. And then if we want to, we could cast a Sylvan Bounty in response, who knows. But I'm gonna start by attacking here. Since if we could also actually cycle this to get another swamp to try and resolve either the Guildmage or the Muse here. I don't know how much that matters. Alright, so if we cycle this, we get a swamp, we can play the Muse, our opponent likely counters it, then we sneak in the Guildmage. I think that's more important than trying to gain 16 life here. So yeah, let's cycle. Wait, let's figure out if we actually have enough mana to do that. So cycle, yeah, we should have enough mana, so cycle for a swamp. Can't counter the cycling. And I think I bait with the Muse here, since I think the Guildmage will be more important to us. So play Graveborn Muse, get this countered. Of course, our opponent does have the shock to kill the Guildmage, but that means he has to use that shock. Play Guildmage. I guess there's also the argument of not giving the opponent the Scry from the Dissolve, which could maybe find him a removal spell for the Baneslayer Angel. So gets back the counterspell, grows the Chasm Skulker, and yeah, maybe we should have baited with the Guildmage and played the Muse instead. Not quite sure. I just liked having the Guildmage in play here, because we can always use the other ability here to try and finish off the opponent if he does answer the Baneslayer Angel. Because let's say our opponent drew a Banefire here, he has to tap out to kill Baneslayer Angel, and then we can still use the Guildmage to try and kill him. So an all-out attack, again, I don't think there's a need for us to block. Seems too risky. Could block here, but again, if he has a shock and then another burn spell and a tribute, then our Baneslayer dies. So opponent decides not to use a shock here to pump the... Alright, there's the Banefire that we sort of were suspecting. So opponent gets to kill the Baneslayer Angel, but we still have a Guildmage in play, which we can use to finish off the opponent unless he has a land into something. Alright, so use a Guildmage to give herself lifelink and then use the other ability to deal damage, or just use the ability to deal damage. So give this one lifelink. Alright. And move to combat. Alright, so this was a pretty close game on a mulligan to 5, I believe. But yeah, Baneslayer is a pretty powerful card. So let's move on to the next one. Alright, let's take a look. And this is another sketchy opening hand with no white sources for either Guildmage or Missionary. So I think we try another one. Alright, this is actually pretty good. We already have both black and white for Guildmage, we have double black for the Muse, and we can play the Missionary early if we have to. Pelakka Wurm is pretty far away, but we should be able to get her eventually. And having the second Guildgate for Gatekeepers is also nice. So let's just go ahead and play the Guildgate. Usually it's correct to hold the Missionary unless you're playing against a hyper-aggressive deck where you just need a blocker and a life. But usually keeping it in hand for cards like Angelic Accord and Sanguine Bond is beneficial. Opponent on a Bloodcast here, so could be an aggro deck, could be a vampire deck. So let's go ahead and play the Guildmage, and I think we play the Forest here. So opponent goes to combat, we're not blocking of course. And we're hoping our opponent taps out here. Alright, 2 mana. Alright, our opponent is playing a vampire deck. So whenever a vampire dies, he can pay a black and gain 2 and deals 2. So we don't really want to trade creatures here. Although maybe we'll want to trade the Guildmage for the Highborn here, since we're not blocking the Bloodcast. And we do have another Guildmage, but we also have a Muse we would like to play here. And our opponent did keep up a black mana here. So if we trade here, he gets to use it. So maybe it's just better to play the Muse here. Could also see playing the Gatekeepers, since this doesn't die to an Ulcerate. Yeah, I think I'll go with the Gatekeepers here. It blocks a little bit better. And if our opponent has to kill this in order to keep attacking, then our Graveborn Muse has a higher chance of staying alive to draw us a bunch of cards. Could have waited until we can use the Guildmage's ability and then play the Gatekeepers, but then we're at 7 mana and we can play Pelakka Wurm most likely. And we can still do that at 5 mana with the Missionary, which is a lot easier. So opponent attacks, since he can't block with it anyways and likely has a land drop. So certainly blocking here. Let's see if our opponent pays with the Kalista, he does. And let's see if he has a land to play. He does. Alright, so certainly a neat combo. And there's another Vampire. This one not very likely to become active, but certainly something to keep in mind. Alright, so here I think I like attacking with the Guildmage. Opponent does not really have any great blocks. And we're not blocking with the Guildmage, so might as well attack. Opponent takes it, and we could run out the Muse, we could run out another Gatekeepers here. I don't actually hate running out the Gatekeepers here and make our opponent answer them before we run out the Muse, since at some point we can actually start attacking with these. So pause the turn. I would say our board presence is slightly better than the opponent, and we're on 30 life. Alright, double Bloodcast, so we don't really have a good way to deal with the Highborn, which means our opponent will get to keep attacking with these Bloodcasts and draining us. So yeah, might as well just take it here, since this means our opponent doesn't actually get to gain 2 life. But our opponent might have another play here for 2 mana. Our opponent might also be holding a land in his hand, so he can play it once the Bloodghast die for the landfall trigger. So, I think it's time to attack again. I think I'll attack with these 2. And intend to play the Muse here. Could also run out Guildmage plus Missionary, but I do want to start drawing some cards and hopefully hit more land drops. Our opponent did not have a removal spell last turn or the turn before, but might just be holding on to one. Alright, let's see the attacks. Alright, so our opponent seemed a little hesitant with that attack. And I think I'll just block here. If our opponent has a trick, then so be it. And if he wants to spend 2 mana to drain us, so be it. But that means he doesn't get to make any other relevant play. Alright, so only drain us for 1 and then plays a Radiant Fountain. So must have a follow-up for 4 mana. What's it gonna be? Could maybe be his own Graveborn Muse. Instead it's a Covenant of Blood. So gets to deal 4 damage and gain 4. So probably takes down a Muse. Yep, there it is. Alright, so no card draw for us, but we hit our 5th land. Comes into play tapped, but at least our opponent used his removal spell, which means we are more likely to have a Battlegrace Angel survive. So what's the play here? I think we start attacking with everyone. Maybe keep back one Gatekeeper, and then I think I'll just deploy both creatures here and not bother activating the Guildmage. Yeah. I think this is fine, since I'm not really planning to block and let our opponent drain us, and the Guildmage can still block the 1/1. So let's attack with everyone. So I guess we're sort of in a racing situation here. Alright, opponent takes the trade, so might have another Highborn or a way to get it back. But I'm just gonna play another Guildmage and the Missionary here. And pause the turn. See if our opponent has another Highborn. Blood Tribute. Well, that's gonna hurt. So we're gonna lose half our life total, and our opponent's gonna gain half that life total. If he also happens to have a Sanguine Bond in hand, then that's a 2-card combo with vampires in play. Only the Bloodghast coming in. I don't think we block here, since if we're losing half our life, then yeah, this doesn't really matter. So alright, I guess our opponent's ahead in the race significantly now, but we are getting close to Pelakka Wurm, and we also have this Battlegrace Angel. So if we want to gain the life, we only attack with one creature. We could also just give 2 things lifelink with the Guildmage and try and race, which I don't hate. But our opponent doesn't have the Highborn anymore, so we could actually just block the Bloodghast with our Gatekeepers, so maybe just playing Battlegrace Angel here and attacking with... I guess we might as well attack with the Missionary here. Gives us 3 life and hits for 3. And then next turn we can attack with the Angel. And I think gaining the life here is a little more important than dealing more damage, since I don't want to get killed by some random cards. I can't really think of too many. Suffer the Past could deal us 2 right now. Opponent could have another Covenant of Blood in hand, who knows. Alright, there's another Covenant of Blood taking out the Battlegrace Angel. So if we can hit another green source, we get to play Pelakka Wurm, which is gonna be awesome. Okay. Instead we draw a Plains, which is not really doing much here. So I think we just activate the Guildmage twice and go twice for the lifelink mode. We could offer the trade for the Assassin or the Guldras Vampire with the Missionary. I think I certainly want to keep back at least one Gatekeeper. So I think I'll attack with these and give 2 of them lifelink. So let's give this one lifelink, and let's give this one lifelink. Opponent takes a trade. And I think we do play the land here. So opponent has 2 Bloodghasts in play, we're back to 20, our opponent's at 30. But we have a slightly better board state, and I think our deck is more powerful if we survive a couple more turns. Alright, that's a good answer to the Guildmage. Opponent deals 2, gains 2. Only 2 cards left, and there's a Tribute to Hunger, which will kill one of our Gatekeepers. So yeah, maybe offering the trade there was not good. Trading the Missionary for the Vampire. Certainly blocking. Only taking 2, and their opponent does not have the land to return the Bloodghast. There's our final green source. So do we attack? I don't think there's a good reason to. If we win, it's by overwhelming the opponent, it's not really by dealing 2 more damage. Opponent has another tribute there, so could put us to 9 life. Yeah, that's a scary card, but it doesn't really kill you unless you've got a decent board state already. And I'm happy if our opponent plays it here, so we can play Pelakka Wurm and gain 7 life back instead of the other way around. Alright, that's his entire turn. We draw more life gain. So now we can attack with Gatekeepers. And if our opponent kills the Pelakka Wurm, we still get to draw a card. So we're in decent shape. Opponent used 2 of his top end cards. Could have cards like Rune-Scarred Demon still, but we do as well. And I think I'll keep this Sylvan Bounty. Well, I guess we're discarding it to Brain Maggot, so never mind. But yeah, I was gonna use it for the life gain purposes. I guess we could have cycled this to get a land and then play the Pelakka Wurm, but yeah, I'm not really gonna play around Brain Maggot there. Opponent gets back a Bloodghast number 2, but does not attack. Another land, but I'm gonna attack with Pelakka Wurm and keep back our Gatekeeper. And we're slowly gonna reduce our opponent's life total, and I think I do play the... Or actually, maybe at this point it's worth keeping the gate in hand in case our opponent has another Brain Maggot he wants to play instead of keeping it in hand. Since at this point we can play pretty much anything. Alright, another attack, another block. And no land drop. Another land for us. Guess we might as well play the Guildgate now. But first, attack for 7. And pass the turn. Alright, so we do have some pretty powerful cards left in our deck. Also have some pretty bad cards like Cultivate. Yeah, I am gonna block. If our opponent has a way to deal 2 damage and has another Tribute to Hunger, so be it. But looks like just a land. Alright, we draw more lands as well. I did have Suffer the Past at some point in the deck, which is a way to exile creatures from the graveyard as well as the opponent's graveyard. So that would be a pretty neat answer to Bloodghast, but I don't have it in the current configuration. Mind Rot. Have fun. and that's a good reason to keep a land in hand. Let's say we draw a Rune-Scarred Demon here, and we want to search up another expensive card, then we would still have a card in hand our opponent could Mind Rot or Bray Maggot, but now we made our opponent use it, so that scenario is less likely to happen. We keep drawing lands, but I guess we're still ahead on board. And again, gonna keep the land in hand. And hope our opponent does not have a giant spell to kill us. Bray Maggot again, not gonna be able to take anything since it can't take lands. So at least our opponent's not doing anything either. And there's a Cultivate, so let's attack. And get some more lands. So let's put this into play, tap this into our hand, so our opponent doesn't know we have a second swamp. Or I guess our opponent knows we have a second swamp since we revealed it. So never mind. Alright, there's a Shadowborn Demon, which will kill Pelakka Wurm, but also draws us a card. There's another Cultivate, which is not really what we wanted. So we don't have a ton of lands left in the deck at this point. So our draw steps should be pretty good in theory, but practice is often a little different. Angelic Accord, an interesting draw, but not really gonna help us now. Let's get the remaining lands and play one out and play out the Accord. So we're gonna be taking 5 every turn. Opponent has to sacrifice a creature every turn, but with Bloodghast and Bray Maggots that's gonna be pretty easy. So we have to, yeah, pretty much draw another Pelakka Wurm, which we have 2 of. Baneslayer Angel, Battlegrace Angel would be good, Rune-Scarred Demon of course. And then ways to gain 4 life to trigger the Accord. So we do have a decent amount of outs left. Alright, just for 5. So we go to 7 here and then we're dead next turn unless we top deck something. So it all comes down to this, and there's a Guildmage, which is decent. But I don't know if it's enough. So we play the Guildmage, we can give both creatures a lifelink, should our opponent attack with everyone. If he has a removal spell for the Guildmage, that's bad. Yeah, I think we just pause a turn here. And hope our opponent does not have more removal. Also, interesting to note that if we're below 10 life, the Bloodghast get haste. We can't really gain 4 life unless our opponent attacks with 2 ground creatures here. But I guess our opponent's just gonna attack with the demon once again. So we go down to 2 and we can gain 4 next turn if we want to get an angel token, and there's a Lone Missionary. Alright, so I think we're in business. So let's activate the second ability. Play a missionary. So we get an Angel token for sure this turn. Opponent loses 4 life. And I'm gonna go ahead and attack. So I'm gonna activate the Guildmage once here. And if our opponent has no response, he's dead. And if he does have a response, we can give our other creature lifelink as well. And we'll have the Angel on defense, which we can give a lifelink as well if things go wrong. Alright, opponent just single blocks. So I think I'll give this one lifelink, in case our opponent does have removal. Alright, Vizkopa Guildmage, a pretty powerful card, especially in the late game. Alright, let's move on to the next one. Alright, let's take a look at our opening hand, which features double Cultivate and Pelakka Wurm, so easy keep. We'll be able to get our black sources with Cultivate and ramp into this Pelakka Wurm early. And if we draw expensive cards, we can easily cast them. So unless we draw a million lands in a row here, we should be fine. Opponent on red. Alright, so don't have the double Guildgate unfortunately for Saruli Gatekeepers. But if we really need a blocker, we can always play it without the 2 gates in play. Let's see for opponents an aggro deck here with the turn 1 mountain. Alright, mountain plains. Could be a hero of Iroas. Instead it's a Krenko's Command, alright, so could be a Boros tokens deck with cards like Young Pyromancer, Goblin Rebel Master. Let's play the plains and Cultivate for double swamp. And pass the turn. And next turn we get to play the Angel if we want to. Or we can keep cultivating. Could this be a Brimals? Or perhaps a Mentor of the Meek? Or a Goblin Rebel Master? Alright, instead it's an Attended Knight. So gets a Soldier token here. So our opponent is playing the tokens deck, so we have to be careful with our opponent using bump effects like Trumpet Blast or Goblin Bushwhacker, giving all his creatures extra power. But Pelakka Wurm should be able to gain us some valuable life. And there's Felidar Sovereign. Alright, so what's the plan here? Either we play the Angel here, which does require an answer, or we can just Cultivate and next turn play Pelakka Wurm. Don't hate the Cultivate, also don't hate the Angel, because we can just curve Angel into Felidar Sovereign, and if we draw land, Pelakka Wurm. So yeah, I think we just go for the Angel here. Don't really get to take advantage of its ability right away. But if our opponent doesn't answer it, we'll be able to gain 5 life next turn. And Felidar will be pretty awesome as well, so let's see if our opponent has removal. And if he goes to attacks, we have to decide if we want to block something here. Kill Fiend, okay. So our opponent could have cards like God's Willing to give it protection, but also combines well with cards like Krenko's Command. Alright, this looks like a pretty hesitant attack. So I think I'll just block a 1-1 so we don't die to a shock effect. Actually, I think I blocked the Goblin in case of a Rebel Master shenanigans. So I don't think this puts the Angel at risk. And we only take 4. Because blocking the Attended Knight, especially with first strike, means if our opponent has a shock, he can kill the angel without losing the knight. If he has another pump spell, that could also be bad for us. Alright, so I think we start by attacking with the angel here. See what happens. See if we get to gain 5. We do. So do we play the Sovereign? I think we do. I'm not sure yet if we're gonna block the Kiln Fiend if it attacks. But I think it's decent to run it out here. And if we don't draw a land the next turn, we can still go Cultivate into Gatekeepers, although it won't gain us any life. So 5 lands for the opponent, could have his own angels at this point. Asha's Favor. Alright, Flying, First Strike and Vigilance. And the Nimbus Wings. On the Attended Knights. So has a Flying First Strike army, which makes it difficult for the angel to attack. Although at this point we still could. Instead our opponent's gonna attack us. But not really taking advantage of the Kiln Fiend, since these are enchantments that don't trigger the Kiln Fiend. There's a Lone Missionary. So our opponent has 4 power in the air with first strike, so we can still attack with the angel if it attacks alone. If we attack with the Sovereign, we will have 7 toughness to our opponent's 6 power, so that also works. So we can choose which one attacks here, and I think we just attack with the Sovereign, since that'll leave a flying blocker, and also because the Sovereign has Vigilance. So let's start by attacking with Sovereign. Thanks to Exalted, he'll become a 5/7. And then I think we just play Cultivate into Missionary instead of Cultivate into Gatekeepers here. So just a chump. Let's Cultivate. Get another green source and a white source. And play the Missionary. So we don't die to some crazy Kiln Fiend turn. Because a Kiln Fiend with flying and first strike is pretty scary. At least it's not double strike. Alright, so our opponent looks to be some sort of enchantment-based deck with a Brute Keeper. So not really taking full advantage of the Kiln Fiend. And yeah, no good attacks. There's an Angelic Accord. I guess we can take a turn off casting the Pelakka Wurm to put the Angelic Accord into play first. So let's see, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So yeah, now attacking with the Sovereign would result in a trade happening. Opponent also could have a shock up. So I think I just play the... Well, we can play the Angelic Accord post-combat and still get the trigger if we gain the life, so we don't have to play it main phase 1. So I think I'll attack with the Angel here. If our opponent has a shock, then he does get to kill it here. Otherwise he does not. And we are actually getting to a point where we might actually be able to win with the alternate win condition. So opponent did not have a trick, so just jumped with Kiln Fiend, which might be a little early, but that's gonna put us to 33 life. So actually, if we play Pelakka Wurm here, we would be able to go to 40, but then our opponent attacks us with the Attendant Knight. I guess our opponent could miss it. Yeah, let's just play the Pelakka Wurm. And hope our opponent does not attack us, so we can win with Felidar. Seems unlikely, but we might still win with Felidar next turn. Galvanic Arc. Okay. Gets to deal 3 damage, likely kills the Missionary, instead goes at our face, which also makes sense. So no Felidar this turn, but I think we can make it happen next turn. Opponent does attack with both, with everyone. Alright, I guess with the lifelink we might actually be able to go back up to, well no, we'll still lose 3 here. But these blocks seem decent. So down to 34 and then up to 38. And did hit another Guildgate, so we get to trigger the Gatekeepers here. And we can Gatekeepers plus play the Accord. But let's start by attacking with... Let's see what happens if we attack with everyone. Then our opponent blocks and takes 11, 13. So he's not dead. So we technically aren't stalling the game. Yeah, I like it. So let's hope our opponent plays along and blocks the Angel here. Alright, looks like our opponent had enough, but we technically could have won with the alternate win condition here, and I'm sure you can imagine how the alternate win condition would be like. But I wanna thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed this gameplay, and as always, have a nice day.